Hey everybody, Lessons with Lenski here. We are going to be covering Chapter 8 and wrapping up Unit 4 on Political Geography. A little meme here. Pay attention, alright? Some of these things might be on the FRQs. You don't want to be like this when you are taking your FRQ. Alrighty, getting into it, you guys definitely need to know the idea of colonialism. You need to know what a colony is. And you need to know an example of colonialism. You guys could definitely use the example of Africa and the way the British and the French split up different areas of Africa, or you could definitely use the colonies of the early American era. However, if you want to give a more vast example, I would definitely pick the Africa example. So I would definitely take these notes down. I'm not going to go ahead and explain everything because we don't have time. Right. So these are two theories, the Heartland theory and the Rimland theory, that you definitely need to know. So the Mackinder came out in the early 1900s. It's based on land power right here. All right. So if you were going to, possess this world domination, you would need to possess this right here. All right. However, this Rimland theory by Spikeman in 1944 was based on coastal power. I mean, if you were, set a goal for global conquest, I think this would honestly be one of the best areas to do it because, well, you have a lot of water and a lot of land, and a lot of great natural resources in these areas. I think the Rimland theory, in my opinion, is probably the best. Centripetal and centrifugal forces, you guys should have already seen this, so have the notes down. There are some good examples that I put in over here of these visuals, so definitely take the notes on that. And then I'm going to click over to the centrifugal. The one way to remember this is centripetal is going to be bringing things together, promoting that national unity. But if you know what a centrifuge is, you put vials in it and it spins things out. What you can definitely, visualize is a country breaking apart or separating or getting pushed away from the center. That's what a centrifuge does. So take the notes on here. And this is also called devolutionary. And I'm going to get to these devolutionary forces in the next couple slides. So, devolution, movement of power from the central government to regional governments within the state. And what causes this? Ethnocultural forces, economic forces, and spatial forces. And I'll give you guys a couple of examples so you have something in your back pocket to use if this ever comes up. So, this is a cultural force, and this would be in Basque and Catalonia. All right. We have seen Catalonia. We have not seen Basque quite as much. This is actually an isolated area. I know we might have seen this once in chapters 4, 5, and 6, because they're a very unique area as far as language goes. Okay. And these two have their own parliaments, language, status, control over education, power of taxation. They're pretty much independent. They just don't have, they're not declared as independent. And as we know, Catalonia wants independence. Two more cultural forces. Belgium, we've, definitely talked about the Flemish in the north and the Walloons in the south, breaking up Belgium. Sri Lanka, we have the Tamils and the Sinhalese, one being Hindu, one being Buddhist. And there's a lot of, forces here that are working against each other because in Sri Lanka, the Tamils are surrounded by the Sinhalese, causing these major issues. Ethnocultural devolutionary movements in Eastern Europe. When communism falls, there's going to be a lot of devolutionary forces here, just breaking into these individual states here. So you see, once communism falls, we're just going to have a whole bunch of independent areas here. Alrighty, so economic forces, Catalonians, right back to it. So the people of Catalonia want independence for the simple fact that they create a lot of the economic opportunities in Spain, and they have 25% of the 40%, 25% of exports and 40% of industrial exports. So they are really putting Spain on its back and carrying it with their really strong economy, and that's why they want that independence. So remember that one. Another two here are France and Brazil. You guys can take these notes down. I got these examples just in case you didn't remember. So Corsica, and then you could remember these three cities. I'd probably go with the Corsica example, and then also the Catalonia example if you're going to talk about the economic forces here. All right. So, moving on to spatial forces, all right? And if you guys need to pause and take those notes, go ahead, go back, rewind, pause, take the notes. I'm going to keep moving on here. So, spatial forces. These might be remote frontiers, isolated villages, places being kind of separated because of rough topography or, mountainous, rocky areas, or because, they have a repeated history of invasions that contribute to, this separating or, the giving power to these smaller areas just because, the main state can't, protect these areas. So, a couple of examples here: Corsica, Sardinia, Taiwan, Singapore, Zanzibar, Puerto Rico. These are all places that have pushed and demanded for independence because they are remote areas, right? The indigenous people of Hawaii have demanded autonomy, and Puerto Rico is obviously an independent area here, a commonwealth. However, it is a territory of the United States. Blank screen. Oh, great. All right, so we're going to get into shapes of states here. Definitely should know these. We did them with the M&Ms. However, what we are going to do, we're going to talk about this in class a little bit just to refresh your memory. Compact, remember, distance from the center to any boundary is pretty much the same. Elongated is just a really long strip. Example would be Chile. Prorupted is going to have the central area with that arm sticking out, all right? Fragmented means that it's broken up, so that it's just little bits and pieces. And then perforated is where you have it is a landlocked area that is being completely surrounded by another state, and that's going to be Lesotho in South Africa. Landlocked states. These are if you were to look at this example of perforated, landlocked states are just areas that do not have any outlet to the sea, and they are surrounded by all other countries. All right, so governing states. You guys definitely need to know types of governments here. So democracy, autocracy, and anocracy. All right, and definitely know these definitions. All right, so right here we have the difference between democracies and autocracies differ in these three essential elements, right? So the selection of a leader. You have democracies have institutions and procedures through which citizens can express effective preferences about alternative policies and leaders. However, autocracies have leaders who are selected according to clearly defined rules of succession. Right? We don't have succession here. That is an autocracy. All right. Citizen participation. You guys can read into this a little bit more here. And then the third is checks and balances. Democracies guarantee civil liberties to all citizens. However, autocracies have leaders who exercise power with no meaningful checks from legislative, judicial, or civil society institutions. So autocracies really are their own ruler. They create the rules. They don't answer to anybody, really. You guys should definitely know an example of that. I don't know if I have one coming up here in the next slide or not. And then this last note, in general, the world has become more democratic since the turn of the 19th century. And, that really did start with the United States gaining independence from Britain. So we really sparked, this match and got people going in our direction. All right, so boundaries inside states. You should know the definition of a unitary state, and an example is France. Federal states. Some examples are Poland, U.S., all right, and then globally there is a trend towards federations. All right, we're gonna start there's a big push for federal states rather than unitary. All right, we got this American eagle down here. We should know a little bit about electoral geography. This is more U.S. Gov than anything, but 435 districts of the U.S. House are redrawn every 10 years. That's when the census is, every 10 years. And then this is when the official population figures come out, which then leads to the redrawing of legislative boundaries as we know it, gerrymandering. All right. 3 types of gerrymandering: wasted vote, excess vote, and stacked vote. Definitely know the difference between these 3. I do plan on having these on the test. U.S. Supreme Court ruled gerrymandering illegal in 1985, but did not require dismantling of existing oddly shaped districts. Like we talked about in class, this is unconstitutional. It is illegal. We can't do this. However, there's loopholes, and people are able to, draw these oddly shaped districts and, make it happen. Moving on here. Why do boundaries cause problems? So here is the definition of a boundary. You should definitely know that. Types of boundaries. Know these. Physical and cultural. We have desert, mountain, water boundaries, geometric, religious, language, ethnic, and frontier. A frontier is a zone where no state exercises complete political authority, and these are kind of the gray areas in human geography. So, types of boundaries: geometric, ethnic. Another one is that's a relic boundary. Relic boundary. One of the two. You guys will see that on the test. So now know the relic boundary. I think that's also on the quiz. So geometric, straight lines drawn on a map. Ethnic boundaries. These coincide with different ethnicities, specifically language and religion. Boundary conflicts here. All right. There are 4 categories of border conflicts: positional, territorial, resource or allocational, and functional. All right. So positional disputes occur when states disagree about the interpretation of documents that define the boundary. All right. So it's really just a misunderstanding or a miscommunication on the boundaries here. Often the result of an antecedent boundary becoming more important after the area becomes populated and gains value. This is also an antecedent boundary dispute or positional. Examples of positional disputes, you can take a look at this. Moving on. Here's a picture of Chile. Territorial disputes, we talked about the Kurdish people in the Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria area. So that's an example of a territorial dispute. Talk about this: irredentism, the spilling over, or the prevention of expansionism. This is a pretty good example here of a conflict. Just the claim to these Falkland Islands down here. You can read about that and take notes on that. Nope, we don't need to cover that. Resource or allocational disputes. These are going to be over things like oil, fertile land, mineral deposits, and things of that sort. We'll talk about this in class. Functional disputes. These are disputes that arise from neighboring states disagreeing over policies to be applied about the boundary, such as immigration. That's big with the U.S.-Mexico border. You can take a look at that. We'll cover that in class. All right, and then I will talk about terrorism in class. Thanks, guys. That was Chapter 8, Lessons with Lenski.